Hey guys, welcome to another segment of Inspire Movement. This is our segment entitled Word of the Day. I hope that everybody's had an awesome week thus far. Today, our word is going to be grief. So when we think of grief, we think of a deep sorrow, right? We think of a deep sorrow, either someone or something that we've lost. Could be a significant other, a loved one of some type. There's different types of losses as well, even smaller types of losses that lead to the same sense of grief. For example, a divorce. If you've lost your family due to a divorce, the end of a relationship, the change of a job that you really cherished, the moving away from your home, your family home, subtler things, losses that also lead to a sensation of grief are something as just moving away from home for the first time, possibly ending your college career, or again, just changing jobs altogether. So there's all sorts of different types of losses that you can experience that lead to the same thing, grief. There are two types of grief. Typically you think of acute grief or complicated grief, and the difference is really the duration of time. So acute grief, it's something really short-lived, possibly a period of days or weeks, versus a complicated grief that's going to be something that could last months, sometimes even years. But in both of those scenarios, whether it be acute or a complicated grief, there can be some lingering triggers that lead you right back to where you started in terms of that sensation of loss over time. There are emotional and physical symptoms associated to grief, just like when we talked about anger last week. Emotional feelings of grief are something like anger, a deep sense of sadness, and again, sorrow, things emotionally that you feel. Are par for the course. And physically, it could manifest itself in things like insomnia. You can't sleep at night. You have this incredible fatigue that you can't get over. There's a lot of overlaps physically and emotionally when you're experiencing grief with, say, something like depression. So it's very different, or it's very difficult to kind of draw a conclusion as to what you may be experiencing if you've already dove into a deep state of depression while experiencing grief. So there's emotional and physical manifestations as well. Typically, it's not like a framework, but you think of 5 stages of grief, starting with something as denial. You don't want to believe that this is happening to you. Being angry, anger, why did this happen to me? Life is so unfair. How could this be? Maybe even bargaining your way out of it, or trying to, as if you could maybe say, well, please make this go away. Whether it be God, make this go away, or the universe, make this go away. In exchange, I'll do this, or some sort of bargaining. There's also that deep state of depression, right? So you're incredibly sad, and you just don't want to do anything. And lastly, the most important stage, and the one that we all want to get to, is acceptance. And that's accepting grief in order to be able to move on, right? So I think that's where we ultimately all want to get to. So I'm going to try to reflect a little bit on grief with you guys. Just last year, March of last year, I actually lost my dad. I lost my dad last year, and I lost him physically to colon cancer, but I feel like I lost him much before then, probably 10 plus years prior, because our relationship had already deteriorated to the point where I didn't really have a relationship with my dad for a very, very long time. And one of the things that eats at me with his loss is that during his time at hospice, I wasn't able to be with him, just given that those same divisions and those same family type problems. But as I really explore on what it is to experience grief with this situation with my dad, I come to the realization that I was grieving for him and experiencing grief for many years prior to that, prior to him actually physically leaving. So in my case, I know I went through all of the different stages that I talked about previously, and I was in denial myself for a long time, and I didn't really want to acknowledge the feeling. Matter of fact, last year when my wife actually talked to my mom, which eventually told me about my dad's passing, I feel like I didn't really acknowledge it, and I was unemotional to some extent, which for some that may be normal. Again, we all grieve in different ways. So for me, I think that I had to connect with that pain, the pain and the loss of losing our relationship, that sort of went away with the deterioration of our relationship. So I found myself in periods of crying incessantly when my family wasn't there, because I felt like I needed to be strong and not show, what I interpreted then due to immaturity as signs of weakness. Wailing, really, more so than crying. And that was not, again, due to his passing, but more so the loss of the relationship throughout. So now that I've come to terms with grieving, that was my form of grieving much before he actually passed away physically, was to grieve the loss of our relationship and have that deep rooted sadness and sorrow in my heart that I carried for years probably, and even to this day it manifests itself. As I mentioned before, there are triggers to grief. Like even recently, maybe just a few short months ago, I found a recording of him playing the accordion, my dad playing the accordion, and it triggered all these thoughts of, oh my gosh, I've lost my dad. And there again, this time I knew better, and I allowed myself to cry and sort of acknowledge the pain that his loss represents. And that's how grief is. Grief is not, something super smooth and that I can say something to you and this sort of framework is going to work for you. The number one thing is to allow for that process to happen, to acknowledge the pain that you're going through, to accept the fact that you're also going to have all these like unexplained emotions that you don't even know really how to cope with. Also know that you're going to be deeply saddened and experience some sort of sense of depression as you're going through it. And to cope with it, try to seek that familial support. Maybe seek a grief counselor, a therapist, or somebody, a pastor at church that can actually get you to find some sort of resolution. If you're going through a period of grief right now because you lost someone, the first thing I want to say is, I'm deeply sorry for your loss, and I really hope that you can find a place of peace and of being whole again, and acceptance more so than anything, so that you can actually become whole again and be able to move on with the rest of your life. So those are some of my reflections on this very sad and very real word for all of us, which is grief and experiencing loss. I hope you guys find these reflections useful. As you know, I do these things from the heart. I hope that you are following us, if not on Instagram, on our Facebook channel, or our YouTube channel, I should say, and look for our logo. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have some very nice interviews, and we're going to continue interviewing folks within the community that are community leaders for your viewership. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you have an awesome week, a blessed week. Always a great pleasure. See you guys next week. Thank you.